Support for Race Unwrapped comes from the Kentucky Center for African American Heritage. Their mission is to enhance the public's knowledge of the history, heritage, and cultural contribution of African Americans in Kentucky and the African diaspora. KCAAH is dedicated to providing a heritage experience through education, enrichment, and entertainment. Located at 1701 West Muhammad Ali Boulevard. Calendar of events and more at kcaah.org.
From Louisville Public Media. Welcome to Race Unwrapped. I'm Michelle Tyreen Johnson. On this episode, a conversation with Gabriel Diego Hernández. He's a hip-hop artist, actor, poet, educator, and a playwright who lives in New Jersey. His play, Puerto Rican, premiered in 2023 and then moved to Off-Broadway. The play explores his worldview as a mixed-race Puerto Rican man and as a father. We talked about the power of the stage to be its own brand of protest, which includes talking about representation. And since I'm a playwright too, I was so excited to talk to him about how we can tell stories on stage to make bigger points about the world we live in. So could you tell me a little bit about your life as a playwright and as a theater artist?
Yeah, sure. So I came to it relatively late. I mean, I always did my, school plays as an actor when I was a child. But in college, I sort of stepped away from it. Or I think I felt like I couldn't hang. I was also focused on hip hop, recording and performing. So I was like creatively occupied, but there also was a fear piece around the theater world. But then I was still working with students. I worked at this summer stock theater camp for like 13 straight years called Extravaganza as like a musical director with like some middle school age kids, and did like community theater. And, I was always like making stuff, even though it wasn't my career. I was in the classroom. I was a high school history teacher. And then at a certain point I transitioned out of schools and into my own, work as a performing artist. And never would have dreamed that I could like make a play. I was like just very happy to be an actor for hire. And then just this random idea occurred to me, and I had this very lucky situation at a theater in the Bronx called Pregones that they incubate a lot of new works, and kind of have an open door policy for members of their ensemble to like pitch them ideas. And, so kind of on a whim, I emailed Jorge Merced, who had been a mentor of mine already. And he's the associate artistic director of Pregones. So I sent him, this kind of half-baked idea, and he was like, "Oh, let's chat." You know what I mean? So that was like 2017, 2018-ish, and we developed that show for the next 5 years. But that, that's the first real, I had created stuff for kids to do, but that was the first like big kid, grown up play. So I'm still pretty new to the game.
So you're talking about your play Puerto Rican.
That's right.
Am I saying that right?
Yeah, Puerto Rican, yeah.
I quite enjoyed it because I liked that it had a lot of different elements. That it was a play, it was a story, it had hip hop, it had music, it had sound. I remember it having this really complicated, like light element. It was when I was in New York visiting for a reading of my own, and I just remember being envious of all the different elements that you had brought together for one show.
Hey, appreciate you.
Yes.
I'm so glad you enjoyed it.
I did. So what do you think is so unique about stage play work as a way to show your worldview?
That's a great question. I feel like there's just, I feel like you can kind of bend time and space, in a fresh way when you're creating something, when you're creating like live work. That I feel like, people like to talk about the rules. What are the rules of the play? Right. And it's important, right? You let the audience know, hey, for these next, 90 minutes or whatever, like here's the world you're stepping into. So there have to be rules at all, but it doesn't matter what they are.
Yep,
Like
exactly.
you're the playwright. You cook the rules. It's your rule book. So that feels really fun for me. In terms of like, hey, we gonna jump around in time. Like it doesn't necessarily need to be all that coherent, as long as I've established that it's incoherent from the beginning,
Right.
Right? If it's a memory play, or if it's like we're in somebody's like head, or if it's, dream world, an alter ego, right? So like the magical elements, so there's kind of like ways in, that are, maybe you're not as hamstrung by sort of, the like realism or math or
Yeah,
I don't know.
exactly. No, I know exactly what you mean. I said something when I was teaching a workshop on playwriting last month that I said I would never say publicly, so now I'll just say it on my podcast. Ha! Ha! But that I think in a lot of ways it takes more imagination to both write a play and to see a play than it does to see a movie, because when you go see a movie they're providing all the bells and whistles for you. And so like my example is the
Yeah.
moon. If your play takes place on the moon, you've got to creatively have buy-in from the audience on, okay, we're now on the moon, as opposed to a film where they are showing you some simulation of what is the moon.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And if I recall from your play, you had a child. There was a child, but we never saw a child.
That's right. Yeah.
Right? Could you tell me a little bit about that play?
Yeah, sure thing. So the premise of Puerto Rican is this, this young father, in the playground, just a normal like weekday morning. He's got his, baby in tow. This kid is about to be 1 year old, a 1 year old. And he winds up in a conversation with another parent, that you do not meet, right? An unheard, unseen conversation partner. And he just kind of like does this sort of deep dive all about his child's identity. So he's in a little bit of like a crisis around his kid's Puerto Ricanness. Is 25% enough to claim it for him? Is his own 50% enough to credibly teach it? And for whatever reason that day, he kind of just goes down this rabbit hole of sort of like cultural transmission questions, and like unearthing these little traumas from his past. What does he want for this kid? So the action gets interrupted at different intervals by this kind of like alter ego character, this kind of like hip hop jester of sorts, who like breaks the fourth wall, and kind of like comments on the action. And so a lot of the musical elements of the piece take place in that kind of gonzo realm, the sort of like hip hop like world. And then we sort of cut back into like the playground, where this dad is still kind of just chatting and navel gazing and stressing and whatever, and so it's got this kind of bifurcated thing where we go back and forth between the realism of the playground and this kind of like bizarro world of MC Plátano, who's like the swaggering hip hop clown who has kind of it's so sort of continues along those paths.
Well, I thought it was fascinating because I always loved plays and movies and books about the culture.
Yeah.
And I think everybody has a culture. It's just a matter of whether they claim it or not, whether
That's
they
right.
recognize it or not.
Yeah.
And as I said when I reached out to you about being on the podcast, this season is about art as protest, or art as social justice, or art as a way of talking about social constructs and consciousness. I think that your work is a lot about, or at least that particular play is a lot about representation as a
Yeah.
man of color. Do you think writing about representation is a form of protest or a form of social justice?
I mean, yeah, I think it can be. I don't want to, you know, pat myself on the back too much. Like, I feel like I I mean, I think art can and should be a tool of that kind of resistance. I in terms of what I was trying to accomplish, I feel like I feel like I saw an opportunity for comedy. These little like racial, like these like American racial neuroses, and my own like kind of cultural anxieties being mixed and whatever, and was like, all right, cool, like let's get in there and like explode these little, moments for the sake of laughs. So it's like, I don't want to be like, oh, I wrote that thing, with some, to try to change, America. Like, I won't make a bold claim like that. But in terms of like the conversations that it sort of inspired afterwards, like at any given show, talking to audience members, or even just like getting the piece produced, because we've been on tour a little bit and we've performed in a handful of places now, and like it surprises me how much how controversial jokes about whiteness,
Uh,
like.
Ooh, we can talk about that. We can talk about that all day long.
Yeah, and we don't need to. I mean, we can, but right,
Right.
like but like I was like, oh wow, like I really was just trying to like get some jokes off, like at my in-laws' expense, at my wife's expense, at my own expense, right? Like whiteness is hilarious. Like I'm trying to clown whiteness a little bit in this piece, among other things.
Right.
And people felt some kind of way about that. Like some people feel some kind of way about that, So I was like, oh, like, all right, guess I'm like, guess this is like weaponry or something. Like,
Well, in my world, that means that you're doing it right. Like,
yeah.
that if you don't write a play that addresses race, and at least one white person in the audience isn't offended, whether anything is offensive or not,
Right.
you know what I mean? Then you're not doing it right.
Yeah. But like I had to do walk out of the theater in the middle of the performance one time, and like we're talking about, I'm talking about arson for profit. Like I'm talking about Hoboken's like really violent history of. There were like 500 fires, 8,000 Puerto Ricans were displaced. Like, this is pretty like, cut and dry. This is like there was like a cleansing in my hometown. It was like 50 something Puerto Ricans died so that like the current white folks of Hoboken could enjoy their New York City skyline views. And like some dude didn't like the sound of that. You know what I mean?
He got offended by your past. I've seen that happen. Exactly.
Yeah.
Which does remind me though, because I do want to ask you this, because I'm a Midwestern girl who lives in the South, although they debate whether this is the Midwest or the South.
Ooh, okay.
Here in Louisville, but newsflash, it's the South. And so people they tend to talk about how on the East Coast and the West Coast, diversity isn't as big an issue because there's more different kinds of ethnicities and races. But do you find that that's really the case? I mean, you pretty much just sort of answered the question, that just because there's more different kinds of people in an area doesn't mean that people are open to different kinds of people.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like one of the things, I mean, like I grew up in Hudson County. I live in Jersey City now. I'm from Hoboken originally. I've lived in Brooklyn for a couple of years, and I was in Connecticut for a handful of years. So that, my world is small. I'm a tri-state area kid. All the places I've lived are like East Coast border towns, right? So everyone's very, very used to like many languages being spoken all around them. It's like just the reality of things, right? There are people from all over the world in all of these little northeastern towns. But the East Coast should not be like celebrating their wokeness or something. You know what I mean? Beyond that, beyond just the realities of, all right, cool, there are a lot of people here, and that's a good thing. That's it doesn't mean that there's any more I don't know respect for differences, or so. Like, there's still, we got miles and miles to go. I think that people are still very much siloed, very much like, when they're in private, or think they're in private, say all sorts of wild, disrespectful stuff about their neighbors. Like, I was at a kid's birthday party, with my child, I don't know, like a month ago. And one of the dads, I think, but maybe just assuming I was white, or just not thinking about it, right? But assuming I was a sympathetic ear, regardless of whether he had engaged with my ethnicity or not, was just like making fun of the Indians who made the cake, who messed the cake up. And he was just like, oh, they were like talking Indian to each other, and they were clearly stressed. And I was like, wow, you know what I mean? Like, this is in Jersey City. This is in Jersey City Heights, right? Like, I'm sure people think that, a lot of people in Jersey City probably think that they're like, oh yeah, like we know, we've got it going on. Like, this is an urbane place. We're like sophisticated and love being in a diverse city. You know what I mean? A comment like that went completely unaddressed by me too. I was just kind of like agog and frozen. And I was like, all right, now I know what that dude's made of,
Right.
All right. It's just like,
I know exactly what you mean. I mean, like when I visit New York, the only time I really see this great, I don't know, melting pot of cultures is when I'm riding the subway. And then when I step off the subway, depending on where I'm going, right, it seems similar to home in that there's these little enclaves of people.
100%.
And so people pat themselves on the back because, well, we're New York, or we're the East Coast, and I'm like, and I'm with you. I've been to places where I'm like, I heard something, I'm like, damn, they just said that out loud.
Yeah.
and because I'm a black woman with dreadlocks, where it's like pretty obvious that what you're getting when I'm in the room, I'm still surprised when I hear certain things. And I think it's because people think that it's not racial, it's just accurate observation. Like so what do you think are the advantages of telling a story in an intimate space, like a theater, versus an anonymous space, like telling a story through the screen or through a book?
I feel like there's just something really, really like sacred and personal about that performer audience relationship, and you can't fake the funk, like it's really like, I mean, y'all are in the room, sort of each other's captives in that way. And it kind of heightens things. It adds an element of I mean, intimacy is as the to sort of echo the word you used. You can't run. You can't run from it. You can there's kind of no escaping like what the story is. You're involved whether you want to be or not. Hopefully you do want. You bought a ticket. You're sitting there, right?
Right.
But there's something really. I mean, when I finish that show in particular, I chat with people afterwards, in the lobby or whatever, and like people come up to me and like just start telling me about their Greek grandmother who like taught them the language or didn't, or this holiday or whatever. I'm just like, oh, we're doing it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yep. you think you know me now. Like, we just spent an hour and a half together, and now, and like, I might have made up that whole damn thing, but you think you know me. And I love it. Like, that was on purpose, right? You know what I mean? Like, and now you're sharing too. Cool. This is beautiful. Like, this is right. Like, this was the point. Like, this was, so that kind of like, that kind of interaction, there's just I don't think there's really any equivalent, to just being able to like have that kind of exchange and really feel like that something was like unearthed.
Yeah. I mean, that's why it's really interesting to see people on stage playing a character, playing a part, because it's like Mm-hmm. That's not them. You know?
Yeah.
And then if they're good, you can just like momentarily like blank out and be like, okay, yeah, okay. Like
Yeah, yeah,
they're
yeah.
playing a rapist. I know they're the nicest guy in the world. Okay,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not to get in people's business. She's playing a hooker. I know she's like only been with one person in her life, but okay, but we will.
But she got paid
But
though.
we got right, but we gonna go along with the whole
Yeah, yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah.
So on that note, theater, like a lot of live art, has still been trying to find its footing since COVID.
Yeah.
Do you still think that theater is still this great place to engage with audiences, similar to what you were just talking about?
I think it is. I think it is. It's just hard out here. Like these theaters are broke. These theaters are broke. These theaters are broke, and there's a funding crisis, and our federal government isn't helping, and the pandemic, set audiences back. We built new habits and lost certain routines, and there's a generation of people coming up who are only engaged with content for 15 seconds at a time. You know what I mean? Like, right? Like, there's a lot of like barriers. There's a lot of barriers. But if things break right, I don't feel like it's any more challenging. Once you're in the room, once you get in the room, it's harder. It's harder to get in that damn room. But once you're there, it doesn't feel any more challenging to have a meaningful and beautiful and memorable connection than it did in 2019. It feels the same. Once you're there, it just feels so much harder to get there.
Man, that's a great way of putting it. Again, getting them there can be the challenge, but man, once they're in the room, damn near locked door, captive audience.
Yeah,
right?
That magic takes over.
That magic. I love it. So as you mentioned, you've taught a lot of young audiences. What unique power do you think the dramatic arts have to teach the youth in how to empower themselves to fight injustice?
I feel like there's just a way when you see when I have my two children. My oldest is about to turn 9. My little one just turned 5. And even just like on like a super like elemental level with like the youngest kids when they're playing make believe. The power of that, the way Nico, that's my littlest kid, the way his body gets taken over by some place he's gone in his mind, and I'm trying to I'm trying to hang. I'm like, damn, I'm tired, or like I'm not in the mood. I'm like, all right, no, let me right, like he's going so hard, like let me meet him there, right, but like just like that, what a young person is capable of in terms of their imagination, and that it erodes for us, right? And we gotta keep working. We gotta like start. We gotta keep those muscles warm, or they'll atrophy, right? For him, it's effortless, But so when young people get that first taste of theater, and the way it empowers them, just in their own instruments, So now when you add revolution on top of that, like there's really it's kind of limitless, right? Like we can imagine better worlds. Like Nico's imagining that he's a tiger right now, right? You know what I mean? But in a handful of years, like he will be ready to start imagining like better worlds. So that's a very that's a very dangerous concept for like tyrannical governments. That's why artists get killed in all of the like tyrannical governments of our world's past, right? Like and present. They know how dangerous it is when artists start cooking, and young people start to make demands of their societies, because it's a limitless possibilities for like what we can create for our futures.
Yeah. On that same note, while most of my work as a playwright has been adult theater, I've had a couple of plays that have been in young audiences. And what's really interesting, and I almost always write about like issues of discrimination, like historical discrimination. And
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
always interesting to see how the kids automatically get it. And it's the
Hmm.
parents and the teachers, but mostly the parents who are
Yeah.
like start clutching their pearls about
Yeah.
that didn't happen or that didn't happen that way. Whereas like I can think of a particular play where a teenage girl is dealing with a teenage black girl is dealing with the microaggressions from a white male adult, and the
Mm.
kids in the audience are like and the adults are like what what, and it's just really fascinating because I think that is part of it, right? That gets knocked out of kids, that their
Yeah.
their instinct to know what's right and what's wrong starts getting formed into something else.
Big time.
So, as a playwright myself, I've found that one of the best things about theater, especially when I write about history or people who aren't known as well, or like your play, examples of things that maybe someone hasn't personally experienced, is that it inspires curiosity. It inspires people to like go look up things that maybe they had never heard about before they saw a play. Have you found that to be the case with your work?
Yeah. Yeah, big time. I feel like um there's with my so for Puerto Rican in particular, there's two places that my mind goes, and they're kind of actually like on opposite tracks a little bit. One of them is like the arson piece that I mentioned earlier. Hoboken has a very like sordid history of there's like a decade of many hundreds of fires, none that the city kind of did nothing about, and it gentrification is like semi-organic in some places. It was decidedly not in Hoboken. Things were rushed, right? They moved that thing along. They were ready to knock these tenement buildings down and put up some luxury condos, right? So the piece of the show that sort of touches on that, and it's really only a few minutes, but it hits hard. I cannot tell you the number of people that, including people that I grew up with, people from Hoboken, New Jersey, born and raised, who had no idea,
Oh
who
yeah.
had no idea, and the only reason that I knew is because of the year that my parents happened to move to Hoboken. Right? They just happened to move to Hoboken right in the middle of it, and they were activists, and so they were, they got involved and did their best and tried to be part of that, like you know uh, um small and ultimately ineffective resistance group that tried to do like neighborhood watch, keep these landlords from like lighting up their own bill. Like they were part of that, and they talked very little about it because it was very painful for them. But it was something that was kind of like I grew up like half knowing, and then in my adulthood, I sort of did a deeper dive and whatever. But so that piece of the show, people like kind of stunned to hear it. So that felt important, right? Like let's remind ourselves, like people everyone likes to acknowledge the land. Like let's do it right. You know what I mean? Like let's not just pay lip service. Like let's like this. There's a lot. That it's a rotten history.
Yeah.
It's a rotten history that and this country is guilty of it in a million different ways. And some of it's from a few hundred years ago, and some of it's from just
Last
a couple,
week.
real recent.
Mhm.
So that piece of it, in terms of sort of like the way people connect to place, or like are not educated properly, because those kind of shadow histories, those things get buried. But then, conversely, or like not conversely, but just like on the other, from another angle, in this piece, there's this father at the center of it, he's kind of fretting this entire time about his child's identity, and like, is he is he going to be Puerto Rican enough? All of that stuff. And then on the sort of other side of that question is my kid's whiteness like a problem, right? Like, do I not want my kid to be white? Is that stressful? Is that sad? Is there a sense of loss or whatever? And audiences really fixate on that piece. And then they kind of assume that in real life I must be too, if I wrote this thing. But in real life, I'm enraged about the arson for profit history of my crappy hometown on a near daily basis. And I don't care about how white my kid is at all in real life. You know what I mean?
And that probably is what offends the people who walk out.
Like, I don't actually care. I don't mind my white kids. Like, it doesn't bother me. Their whiteness doesn't bother me. And you know what I mean? So to sort of like play with like a very real piece of like grief that I've lived with for decades now, and fury, and then a thing that I actually don't really care about, but pretended to, for the sake of comedy. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of like a little bit like, it's a little bit chaotic, or like confusing, or the sort of like, oh, what's real then? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, dog. Like, you know what I mean? You tell me, right? Like that there has to be like clean lines, or like, I don't know.
I know what you're saying though, right? It's just part of what happens, I think, when people go see a play. It happens to a lesser extent when they go see maybe a movie or a symphony or something. But people get caught up into thinking that these human beings that are real are real.
Yeah.
And
100%.
And everybody thinks that everything that a playwright writes on some level is autobiographical.
Mm-hmm.
I have a friend who wrote a play where it's like, oh, that play's about abortion, right? You've had an abortion. She's like, no, that's not what that play was about.
Yeah.
Whether I've had an abortion or not is not your business, or whether it's true or not. But that's not what the play was about. But people are bringing their stuff to what you've written, and they're judging, like you just said, they're kind of judging, including judging themselves.
Yeah.
So you, in your bio, have said that you're a hip hop artist, an actor, a poet, an educator, and a playwright. Which of those roles do you feel offers you the widest freedom of expression when it comes to making this world a better place? I mean, I forgot that you're also a parent. So, I mean, we can throw that in too.
Hey, I feel like the educator piece has to be top of that particular pyramid in my own, I won't speak for other people the other multi-hyphenates who might rank them differently, but for me, there's something about, in terms of what you were just saying about like how the parents are like set in their ways, harder to get to reevaluate, learn new ideas, and the ways that young people just haven't gotten like stuck yet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I am I gonna throw my mom under the bus? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna throw my mom, but with love. Like my mom was, once upon a time, my mom was a radical.
Okay.
And then she like kind of became liberal. You know what I mean?
So is your mom? I know you're mixed. Is your mom white or Puerto Rican?
My mom's white. My mom's Jewish.
Okay, all right.
My mom was up to like, but like she doesn't owe anyone anything. So I'm not saying, I don't think she like oh, my mom messed up because she didn't like adapt with the times. No, she did. She's got it going on, right? But 50 years ago, she was a radical. You know what I mean? And now she's like kind of like a liberal white lady in a way. You know what I mean? Like and so, like I think about that, like and just the ways, like, and I feel it in my own self. I feel it in my own self too. I'm 40, and in my early 20s, I was just really down to like cause trouble. I was really down. I got fired from so many places. Straight up. I made a habit of it. Because I was just like, yo, I got nothing to lose here. I got nothing to lose, and this thing's wrong.
Yeah.
This thing's wrong, so I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to say something about it, even if I'm the only one, and even if it means that's my job.
Yeah, I pissed off my share of employers in my 20s and my 30s. And okay, we'll get into some of my 40s too. But that's
right? But I feel myself now kind of just like being a little bit more loath to, you know what I mean? Like put my neck out there. I'm just like, just like I'm tired. I feel I got more to lose, you know, right? So I'm just like, damn, like, what's happening to me, right? You know what I mean? Like, have I lost my edge? Have I lost my integrity? Like, do I not, am I not courageous in the way that I used to? Or is this just kind of like natural? Like, you know what I mean? Like, and I try to forgive myself and be like, nah, like this is, you know, just, like, I'm a parent now, right? Like I can't be getting fired willy nilly. There's different stakes. There's different stakes here. I owe my children a modicum of stability, right? You know, right? But when you think about young people, if you're teaching young people, and whatever age they are, you know, and there's a group of them, and like they're stepping into that zone where like they're fearless. Like I'm afraid all the time, because I'm just like, oh, like, if I do this pleasurable thing, like play soccer on a Sunday morning, like, am I going to tear my Achilles and like not be able to like take my kids to school the next day, right? Like I'm constantly living in fear, big and small, but like young people aren't. That's one of the things that's so amazing about them. They're like a completely fearless group, and also are like forgiving and not judge and don't judge each other, and you know what I mean? Like don't have to be convinced to sort of play with people who are different, you know? Right? So it's like, what a combination. That's incredible. You know, so like, you know, so I feel like there's really like the kind of ideally situated for, you know, the you know, to sort of take that next step and like politicize and
Do you think your art is a place where you can be fearless?
I do. I think that, you know, I'm not saying that I always am.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I think, but theoretically, you know, it can and should be a place where you can live without fear and you know, just sort of throw things at the wall and see what happens, and you know.
I get it. I totally get it. I mean, I feel like that's part of why this season came about. That was what inspired the season, because I always tell people, Michelle Tyreen Johnson, the journalist, you know, my day job, there are things I cannot say. Michelle Tyreen Johnson, the playwright's character, can say whatever they want.
Yeah.
You know, it's just pretty simple. So this has been wonderful, and I just have one more question for you. It's the popcorn question that I ask all the guests, and it is, what is your favorite or one of your favorite, you can give more than one, protest songs?
My mom, bring my mom back up. You can tell I'm a mama's boy. I grew up, she just turned 80.
Ooh, get out. I love it. My mother just turned 82.
I guess she's going to be 81 this coming August, so it's not even just. Oh, good for her. She was, you know, she protested the Vietnam War, you know, for much of her 20s. You know, she was down in Huntsville, Alabama, registering voters, you know, in the early 60s. And I grew up hearing like a lot of like protest songs from her. She's a big Pete Seeger fan. And I think which side are you on is the one for me. Like it's like in my head all the time. Which side are you on? Tell me which side are you on? It's so like haunting and
I
like
love it.
it's
Yeah.
like it's really it's like it's elegant. It's a really because sometimes things don't exist in clean binaries, but sometimes they do.
Yeah.
Sometimes they do. It's like
Yeah.
which side of history are you on, dog? You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
That is so true, though. I mean, that's and that's the thing I was thinking literally just this weekend about protest music. That a truly good protest song is applicable no matter what the protest is.
Yeah.
Whether we're talking the Vietnam War in the 60s, whether we're talking Black Lives Matters in 2020,
Hundred
whether we're
percent.
talking ICE protests in 2026, that where the the power is coming from is about justice. And justice doesn't know a color or a gender or even a fight. Justice just knows what's right.
100%.
Yeah. This has been so awesome. This has been great.
Oh, such a pleasure, Michelle. Thanks for having me.
Yes. That was playwright Gabriel Diego Hernández, who's also a hip hop artist, an actor, a poet, and an educator. We'll put a link to his work in our show notes. Next up, we'll talk to Amara Tabor Smith. She's a choreographer and performer, and she'll help us explore the idea of resistance through dance. I'm Michelle Tyreen Johnson. Thanks for listening and for joining us on Race Unwrapped.
Race Unwrapped is produced by Michelle Tyreen Johnson for Louisville Public Media. Music by Allison Cross. Our executive producer is Laura Ellis. For more information, to contact us, or to support Race Unwrapped, visit raceunwrapped.org.
Support for Race Unwrapped comes from the Kentucky Center for African American Heritage. Their mission is to enhance the public's knowledge of the history, heritage, and cultural contribution of African Americans in Kentucky and the African diaspora. KCAAH is dedicated to providing a heritage experience through education, enrichment, and entertainment. Located at 1701 West Muhammad Ali Boulevard. Calendar of events and more at kcaah.org.
From Louisville Public Media.